The Chicago Bears win. 14-game losing streak is snapped 40-20 against the Washington Commanders on Thursday night. Nick and I talk you through the highs, the lows, the ups, the downs, the ins and the outs of this game on this episode of Bear With Us. What's going on, everybody? My name is Robert Schmitz, the editor-in-chief of Da Bears blog, here as always with Nick Whalen of Football Guys. And man, Nick, how does it feel to finally win a game almost a year after the last win, I guess?
I'm smiling, man. Like, it's been a while since I've smiled with the Bears football game, or how they've played. I mean, do I say complete game? I mean, it got really close there for a while, but it's awesome. I mean, you said snapping the losing streak. We also have to say they snapped that, giving up 24 points for how many games in a row? It was only 20. So they broke that streak too.
And it's so funny because, okay, let's stick positive before I put any asterisks on this, because there's a comment to be made about how Washington, if the shoe was on the other foot and you and I were wearing Commanders jerseys, right, we'd say, wow, not a good one. Our team clearly overlooked the Chicago Bears, and we made every mistake along the way possible to make sure that we couldn't possibly bring the game back. That fumble in the second quarter or in the third quarter didn't help anything. Missing a field goal that keeps you within reach, blowing the entire first half offensively. But I'm not a Commanders guy. I'm a Bears fan, and oh my gosh, can I start where I want to start, Nick?
Yeah.
The supporting cast. I know. We'll get to talking about the NFL's current leader in touchdowns in Justin Fields, who currently leads the NFL in touchdowns. If you wanted to go there, week 5 asterisk and all that. But
we'll go there.
The receivers, they were running open all night long. Cole Kmet had a huge wiggle route. I don't know what you'd call it. I guess you'd call it like a crosser or a drag over the middle. But all the same, he gave that linebacker a shimmy before crossing his face on that touchdown. Mm-hmm. And nobody's supposed to cross your face in defensive coverage. So Kudos to 85 for making his way there. DJ Moore obviously catches 230 yards. But maybe most importantly, the offensive line balled out. This is a defensive line loaded with stars. And I was talking to a Commanders guy earlier. His name's Big Doug. He was a great interview. He talked about how the Washington defensive line hadn't gone off to the start that anybody in Washington wanted them to. But all the same, this is Daron Payne, the guy that we were salivating over in free agency. This is Jonathan Allen, one of the best 3 techs in football. This is Montez Sweat, who at times was handing Darnell Wright his lunch back on a platter, but then Wright got back on top of him, and Chase Young, another target Bears fans have been going after for as long as I can remember, and they blitzed occasionally, and a bunch of other things. This offensive line balled out in not just the pass game, but the run game too. I'm throwing a lot at you, Nick, but you know what? There's a lot that we say about Getsy. There's a lot that we say about Fields. I have seen a lot of talk as all this Caleb Williams mess started really coming up that the Bears didn't have a positive enough environment to develop a quarterback with. And this, to me, looked like a quarterback very, very well supported. And I kind of just want to give a little round of applause, right? Because we missed Darnell Mooney on a deep route. Darnell didn't come up with a catch that could have been PI. There were a couple others, like Mooney's running open, Moore's running open. Kmet did his job. Offensive line was awesome. It was great to not have to see a quarterback do more than limit the bad plays while hitting some of the good ones today, which Fields did great at. By the way, I would argue his best thing he did, keep the ball out of harm's way and take the biggest disasters and undisaster them throughout this Bears game. But that's a big rant. Let me turn this back over to you. What did you think?
Well, the sentence of the biggest disasters and undisaster them is an interesting phrase, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, we won't go negative right away, but yeah, there's certainly some huge positives. And when you want to talk about, DJ Moore is, dealing and Justin Fields is dealing, I think Luke Getsy has done well. I don't know that he's completely in his bag, because I was thinking of multiple things okay, do this differently. And we'll dive into that, but he's been much better. and especially in the first half of games, and even at the end there, right? Because I was begging for a play action on second down, and then they threw on third down, but still, like, you're not going to be able to get it on third and short. You know what they're going to be doing. They have like 8 or 9 guys up there. So, yeah, a huge support to him. Again, more adversity on defense and offense. I mean, we lose 3 running backs. We
Right.
lose an offensive lineman, which you know how I feel about him. But either
Okay,
way, I don't
come
like
on,
seeing
come
players
on.
hurt. I
Let me
don't
make
like
the
players
joke
hurt.
so you don't have to, because I said this on Twitter at the time. That is one of the rare moments you will ever see an offensive line get better on accident,
Yep.
because the Patrick injury forced Whitehair back to center, which immediately upgraded the center.
Yes.
And then any moment, because it was about half the game, that you had Tevin Jenkins in at left guard, suddenly you had Borum, Jenkins, Whitehair, Davis, and Wright. The interior was on lock. The exterior was good enough. Like, that's an
And
okay offensive
there's
line.
rushing lanes. There's Jonathan Allen not getting walking the offensive lineman back. I mean, it was and to Tyreek Carter, like, I'm not gonna fault him. Jonathan Allen, I mean, that D line's a beast. Like, you were getting crushed, but like, I'm gonna give you some. But so that and Cole Kmet had another nice game. You
Mhm,
talked about that. I call it a jerk route. So you're coming across the middle and you give a little
mhm.
hesitation and you keep coming. Because they think you're going to do a Hank route, right? Or a
Right.
spot right over the ball. And so they close, then you keep going. But even like the defense, like literally band-aided secondary. Like
Yep.
everyone's injured. Stevenson can't get out of his own way for I mean, literally, if you were to bet any kind of money, like, hey, he'll do a pass breakup or not PI, you had to put money on it. How much money are you going to put on any pass his way?
Man, I'll tell you what I think is so funny about Stevenson, because I feel like everybody does that. There are a couple things in football, Nick, that we always do, despite the fact that the data never says it's going to work, right? Like, this is especially an off-season thing. People go, oh man, this rookie quarterback, I think he's about to lead that team to the division. That was Bryce Young with the Carolina Panthers for months after he got
Yep.
drafted,
Yep.
despite the fact that rookie quarterbacks, and especially rookie quarterbacks with no weapons to throw to, historically struggle. And that's what makes CJ Stroud so outstanding. We also do this thing where we expect corners and tackles to be good out of the gate, and they are not. Like, for instance, I would agree with you, Nick. Normally, I would be like, oh yeah, Tyreek had a rough one. Except there's a first round pick that had a way worse game on the other team. Emmanuel Forbes got dusted by
Benched.
DJ Moore.
Benched.
I mean, nigh on lost game in terms of truly, truly. So Fields finishes with what, 282 yards? He didn't throw a pass at the end of the game,
Yep.
did he?
Yeah. 282. Yep.
DJ Moore caught 81.5% of Justin Fields' passing yards. Conceptualize that for a minute, Nick.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing to say Fields played really well, and he did. Do not take anything away from him. Probably my favorite thing. Let's talk about this. So, Luke Getsy, what's his official title? Is it play caller, Nick?
It's a coordinator of the
It's
offense.
offensive coordinator. And I can't help but think one of the best things that Luke Getsy did was that, come hell or high water, I don't know who did it, whether we want to give Andrew Janoko the credit, but I'm going to, at this moment, pat Luke Getsy and Justin Fields on the shoulder with both of my hands. Like, envision me in the middle, and I'm going to pat both of them on the shoulder with one hand each, because against cover two zone, they just mutually agreed, throw it to DJ Moore's outside shoulder. And
Yep.
Moore came through every single time. What did this mean? This meant we got the ball out. This meant that against zone, we had a place to go. We hit Kmet on a deeper curl route against a separate zone earlier in the game. We
Mhm.
had answers against the coverages that we knew
Yes.
were coming. And that's all I wanted to see.
Mhm.
After it seemed as if similar coverages flustered the Bears last week against Denver. This looks like a
And all
quarterback
season. Let's just say all
all
season, it's
season.
frustrated them.
Honestly, all season. This looked like a quarterback and an offense that had an answer. It may not be the answer the entire season, but having an answer looks so much better, doesn't it, than
Yep.
holding onto the ball for 5.5 seconds and
Well,
charging into your offensive line.
and his eyes were pretty good, I
Mhm.
thought. And when, I think he held on the ball a little longer in the second half when things got tight, but he still made it work. As you said, what did you call it before?
Taking the disaster plays and undisastering them.
Undisastering, So here's some fun stats, and then I'll get into some of that stuff that you were talking about. So the Athletic put this out, and I retweeted it. Justin Fields, when targeting DJ Moore this season,
Yeah.
has a has a has a perfect quarterback rating, 158.3. He's 27 of 34 for 531 yards and 5 touchdowns, which, I mean, you talked about throwing to Moore on the outside shoulder. So let's break down a couple of things. One, that was a touchdown down the sideline. Not sure why they called him out. I've not seen anything even close to him out. He barely missed him on that corner shot, on that streak, just outside his fingertips for another touchdown. So really, it could have been a 5 touchdown performance. And the touchdown at the end, people are going to be like, wow, that was really lucky. It wasn't lucky. Where Justin Fields threw that ball was high and outside. Either DJ Moore was going to catch it or nobody was going to catch it on that 3rd and 2. That makes it a safe throw, in my opinion.
Well, that plus to at least some degree, for crying out loud. The more you learn about football, Nick, this is at least how I feel. It's probably how you feel too. The more you learn, the more you realize how little you can know. You have to speak in generalities, right? Because we don't know what they're being coached at any point. Did Fields look anything like he looked in week 1? No, not at all. Like week 1 Fields looked like he hadn't attended camp compared to week 5 Fields, just in terms of drop pace, in terms of where are we going with the football, in terms of how are we releasing it. I mean, for crying out loud, against, what was it, Tampa Bay, we even had a pass to Chase Claypool on that out route where the ball looked like it got tipped and real people swore it got tipped. It didn't get tipped. It just came out of his hand really terribly.
So speaking of that one, DJ Moore's first touchdown, that corner route, that one looked like it came out a little funny to me. Did you see any of that?
Oh, I was just so excited that he'd hit a hole shot that
I
I
was
didn't
too.
care.
I don't think it was not nearly as bad as that one, but I saw a little bit of it, but nothing else the rest of the game. So I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that one.
Which, by the way, badass call. From what I could tell, and this is just a super quick review, the Bears had figured out that they were going to get 4 verts, or the Bears had figured out they were going to get Tampa 2 on 3rd and 14, which, to be fair, that's something Eberflus does a lot too. So in a lot of these defenses, that's the call. And they just ran 4 verticals against it. And what that means is, for anybody listening, the deep safety is going to play the inside route, because as Mooney just darted up the field, he turned his hips inside, which opened up this gaping hole in the corner of the end zone. And I mean, it was wide open with a capital W. But to me, yeah.
Well, and just so you know, so everyone that's wondering, why would that be? Because if throwing to the outside, the longer throw takes more time, gives him a chance to recover. So that's why it's designed that way, to play inside out.
Right. Exactly. And so I'll tell you what, there are so many quarterbacks out there that people give grief to. Seriously. Like, to me, a game like Denver, where it looks like the defense can't defend anything on accident at some points, like that's great. And Fields made some special physical throws, but we knew Fields could make some special physical throws. That didn't make me say, have we advanced, right? In this game, not only did we chain 2 good performances, so that makes the performance against DVOA's worst historical defense tracked so far. I will keep saying it, because that is 3 asterisks, like, in and of itself. But this Washington defense is very NFL normal. They've got NFL talent. This is a defense you should be able to beat. And moreover, Nick, I'm going to say something that might be music to your quarterback-friendly ears. We've got to stop doing this thing where we want quarterbacks to play so out of structure that we almost get frustrated when they play well within structure. I'm really excited that Fields, to some people, looked like all he did was distribute the ball. Good. That's the quarterback's job.
That's when you go through your play calls, you're like, yep, perfect. Yep, do this. Just the preseason screens, I don't care. Just get your weapons and let them do their thing.
That's the quarterback's job. Like, it's where the Brock Purdy hate. Does anybody think Brock Purdy is the most talented quarterback in football? I don't know if anybody does. but he's playing phenomenal football because he distributes to his weapons. And
Mhm.
tonight, why would you go anywhere but DJ Moore? And I thought Fields kind of got jobbed on some of these. Like DJ comes up huge with that touchdown that, yes, of course, it was a sweet throw that DJ Moore tracked down. But man, there are a lot of receivers that don't catch that ball.
Mhm.
Like that is a
Well,
really phenomenal catch.
like even talking about like tonight, right? So DJ Moore had 10 targets, caught 8 of them. So one was the one in the corner he didn't get, and the other one was the PI that was not called.
Right.
Cole Kmet, 5 receptions on 5 targets. Tunyon, 2 on 2 targets. St. Brown missed that one swing. Herbert missed 3, which I think were just checkdowns and tips. But here's
And
the thing.
and the sweet give and go play that I'm so amped he attempted again because he used to
Oh,
do that as a rookie. And
mhm,
I'm okay, it's just totally my opinion, right? But it looked to me like Fields got to it just late enough. Like he had the idea and then he started thinking about it. And then he threw the ball to Herbert, but like very normal bodily reaction, Nick. This is me like tinfoil hatting, right? But if I ran at you, you're going to tense up and roll your shoulder forward, right? To brace yourself for a hit like a normal person. And
yep,
Fields, as he's throwing it, seemed like he hooked the ball to his left a little bit, which is what it would have been if he tensed his shoulders at all. Wouldn't
mhm,
surprise, but I'm just excited we're doing it at all because there are
yeah.
going to be these give and go
Well, we
opportunities.
we saw it last week. We see it
Hmm.
again this week. Now,
Exactly.
here's the one thing that does bother me, though.
Tell me.
Happened last week as well, and that's happening this week. Darnell Mooney, 4 targets, no receptions. To start the game, I tweeted this out. Darnell Mooney, just continue to run and catch it over your shoulder. Why are you trying to high point it when you could no there's no contested reception there. And it continued throughout the game. And he's kind of had honestly a slow season, even though he has this rapport with Justin Fields. Now, being the wide receiver 1 last year, and now looking at DJ Moore, we really know what a wide receiver 1 is now. So I get that part. You're not going to get as many targets, but we're missing some chemistry pieces here with Mooney.
We're missing some chemistry pieces. I personally thought Mooney got jobbed. I'm not a refs guy. I'm normally a like the refs are what they are. They're practically like a force of nature. Sometimes you're gonna get a call sometimes you'll get a call like there was at least one that went the Bears' way. I know there's at least
Well,
one,
there's
but
2 of them with Stevenson. One, he tried to turn and they flagged and then they called off. Another one was to Logan Thomas, which he did interfere and they didn't
right.
call.
Right. So sometimes you're gonna get a call. And other
Mhm.
times I thought Mooney got the equivalent of like punch in the face. Like that's to me, that's plain Jane DPI in the end zone. But
Yep.
whatever. I mean, sometimes you don't get the break, right?
Yep.
It did feel like on that deep over, Fields just didn't connect with Mooney. That's a tough throw. You're not
A
gonna
little
get it
air
every
on it. I
time.
think more air
The
would have helped.
if Mooney didn't turn or Mooney's actually done this a lot. It seems like when Mooney makes blatant contact with the DB and then he gets spun around, he doesn't resume his route. I don't know why. I don't know what he sees, but that's just a common thing. Either way, he and Fields didn't connect, and that's fine. But it's more to say, Nick, that to me, it sure feels like taking Claypool out has meant that the Bears have simplified the offense within their passing concepts because now they're not doing this song and dance that a lot of teams with a lot of receivers do, where they say, okay, well, on this play, Curtis Samuel is going to be our wide receiver 1. And on this play, John Dotson's going to be our wide receiver 1. And on this play, Terry McLaurin's going to be our wide receiver 1. They go, nope, it's DJ or it's Mooney,
Right.
number 1 and number 2.
Well,
Maybe we'll throw in
like
Kmet
Washington.
sometimes.
Washington, it's like, what are you doing? Like when you needed some stuff, Terry McLaurin's not in the game. I'm like, why? I
He
joked
had to
about
be
this. I'm
hurt,
like, Byron
right?
Pringle revenge game. Like, why is he out there and not Terry McLaurin?
Right? He had to be hurt, didn't he?
I
Like,
mean, I don't know. I mean, it seemed like they're overthinking it, but that might be the case. I mean, he was in it the last drive.
right. Well, the
It
last
meant nothing.
drive, because a hurt football player is not going to be denied at that point. Like,
I
let's
want
say
the
he's
stats.
what?
I want the stats.
But
So yeah, so that's certainly one thing. I mean, I think we've talked about this. I'm pro Claypool. I would love for him to come back
sure.
and resurrect this thing. Like that would be great because I think he can help the team because as we saw, Tyler Scott didn't get any targets. St. Brown, I'm not sure if you saw this by the way. St. Brown was on the field as a gunner on a punt that he didn't do anything. Like he got shoved and like almost like pancaked like 20 yards down the field. And I'm like, that's when I think it was Jameson Crowder had like a 15-yard return and like no one was around him. I was like, this is
Thank you.
pathetic. So that's right there. Do you want to talk about the running back injuries, or you want to talk about defense, or do you want to hear Justin Fields' passing game pace this year?
Well, first of all three of those are great conversations. The number one that I really want to I want to hit the nail one more time about the offensive line, because it is just the easiest thing. It is, so there's this joke I saw on Twitter the other day that made me laugh. Maybe it'll make you laugh too, where they said there's nothing funnier than going around to every fan's forum posts, Twitter fan base, etc., and finding that it turns out 25 out of the 32 NFL fan bases every single year are convinced that their offensive line is the absolute worst in football.
Yeah,
And
I've heard that one. Yeah.
made me laugh because it's totally true. I mean, if your offense is the 24th best in football, the Bears coming into this game were the 10th best pass blocking offensive line in football per PFF, and I bet they'll get better after this game. Like, this offensive line is playing about as good as you can ask.
It's been better.
Near as
Week
good
one
as you
was
can ask.
terrible. Week one was terrible, and then it's slowly gone up.
Totally. But a game like this against that defensive line, like,
Mhm.
that puts you in great spirits going to Minnesota and
Yep.
then
Oh,
Las
Minnesota.
Vegas after that. Like,
Mhm.
we're talking about a defensive line. To me, the best thing that this offensive line is doing, not to get distracted, is picking up blitzes. When you throw extra rushers at Chicago, it's not bothering Chicago right now, which is actually, to whether it's Getsy, Chris Morgan, I don't know who to pat on the back right now, but it's to somebody's credit. And
Yeah.
we'll probably give a little bit of credit to Justin Fields because
Right.
he's
I
a
was gonna say
quarterback calling
Fields.
the pass, bro. Like, and
Yep.
so we saw this against Tampa, honestly, where every time Tampa blitzed, more often than not, it worked out against them. And we saw it tonight on the occasional Washington blitz, but I really can't say enough about the rushing lanes that the Bears started to open tonight. Easily their best rushing game of the year, I think. And it sucks that the running backs got hurt like they did. But
Ugh.
from the perspective of getting a strong, let's call it, evaluation on Justin Fields, this is the kind of game that, should things go south, hopefully they don't. Honestly, this rules. Keep me on this high, right? This is great. But if things do go south, Nick, we can go point back to this Commanders game and say, no, these guys can play. Like, we can see that this offensive line can play a little bit. You know
Mhm.
what I mean?
Well, and I think it's only going to get better. Like we talked
Sure.
about, Nate Davis back and close to what Nate Davis was previously is a huge upgrade. Tevin Jenkins back and not having Lucas Patrick and Cody Whitehair, who honestly Whitehair has been terrible too, is a huge bonus. So you were talking about the run game. So and again, this is just an easy way to look at it. It's not anything super analytical, but yards per carry. Herbert was 7.6. Fields was 5.2. That includes all those sneaks and those like running dives that he had, which take away a lot. And Roshan Johnson was 6.3. So that's, I mean, in blasting game, not a running back, but 3.3. But combined, that's a really good rushing team. There was one thing I wanted to kind of talk about in terms of just how conservative we got in the second half offensively. I have our total yards in the first half at 307 and our total yards in the second half at 139.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right now it's so funny because the Bears offense feels like they are living off of DJ Moore yards after the catch, because we just literally haven't seen it from anybody else. Like,
Yep.
DJ Moore is the only guy on the Bears right now that is capable of shedding a tackle and running for 5 yards, and then he runs for 30. Like,
Right.
on some of these balls.
He
It's
he he look he
insane.
just looks like a cheat code. You know what I mean? Like you have that, you put in that cheat code, you're playing your video game, or for the old school guys that know Tecmo Super Bowl, it's like playing with Bo Jackson. You're like, oh, cool. I'm just gonna give it to Bo and just run through everybody.
Yes.
Like he's just playing at a confidence in a different level, but also you can see Fields throwing his way has this confidence in this different level too, which is also a big bonus. The other guy that I think is playing with some confidence is Cole Kmet. I think he's playing well.
Cole Kmet's playing well. I mean, it's always funky when we talk about Cole Kmet, right? Because what did he do tonight, right? Did he catch a contested catch?
Mm, No, probably not.
Did he separate in man coverage?
Zone coverage.
Yeah, right. And that's not me trying to dunk on the guy. It's that whole, like, is he doing anything we didn't think he could already do? Not really. But if Justin trusts him, then who cares? Like, good
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
And And that's fine. Like if Cole Kmet and DJ Moore are Justin Fields' somehow get out of jail free cards against zone coverage, I'll say, well, not what I expected, but you do you, and that'll
Mhm.
be enough for me because that
Well,
deep hook again, yeah.
the touchdown, was that man coverage?
The touchdown, what I don't know. That actually is a good question. What
Yeah.
would you call it?
It was
Because
I mean, it was a matchup for sure, like either zone or man, like
it's the
this
same thing.
linebacker on Kmet.
I ran into trouble with this on Twitter just the other day, where I said that that Denver was playing man coverage the entire first half. A lot of people could argue that they were playing forms of match coverage the first
Right.
half, but to me, there's a point where it's like, okay,
Yep.
but that's kind of ends up the same place.
Yep.
But so within that, did I don't know, but all the same, all the same. Like the weapons are producing where we thought they should, right?
Mhm.
And that's so awesome. That's
Mhm.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so
What'd you
yeah,
think
and there's
about Roshan's injury?
that sucks
It
'cause
was on
I'm
the
thinking
obvious play, right?
yep, it was the huge collision play,
Yep,
I
the
think, and I was like,
massive
"Ooh."
collision.
Yeah. And actually thinking of concussions, I was like, "Is Fields gonna get one after he got suplexed on his
Oh,
head?"
it's so funny you say that. I have never seen Fields run with the strength that he did, uh, that he ran on that 2nd and 6, where he only got 3 yards. But I mean, he went straight into the linebacker. He even put like the ball into the linebacker's helmet and held on
Yep.
to it. And it took a second tackler to bring him down. I complain a
Mhm.
lot at times, maybe too much, about how I don't love it when the quarterback run game just exposes your quarterback to a blatant hit. But
Mhm.
like that didn't look like Justin Fields. Rookie Justin Fields, that's an instant fumble. Second year Justin Fields, I still think he gets whacked, but that stalemate, man. Like if we lost a little speed, but we gained a little power, you can figure that out because
Well
that's much more the Jalen Hurts flavor.
well, you look at yeah, and you look at the sneaks, right? The tush pushes, whatever you wanna call them.
Finally,
He
they
was
just
running
ran
with
him
power
normally.
on those too, and now we're converting those, and that's we a weird thought. We talked about this against Green Bay when you didn't
I
do
was
that
about to
and we
say,
messed up.
can we go back to that a little bit? Because there is an element of this that's like, why the frick did this take so long?
Yep.
Like, what this isn't exactly the offense that I think you and I ideated in the offseason, but it's damn close.
Oh, it's getting way
Like
closer. Yeah, way closer. And plus, like, even tonight, though, there's still some things with that where I'm like, Tyler Scott's the guy you want pushing? Like, you don't wanna put Kari Blasingame there? Like, what are we doing, you know? But even despite that, he was running with a lot more conviction, and I don't know if that was him being a leader, knowing that I need to run with conviction because all we have is a fullback. The only one I question with him, right? The rest of the game too, he had other good runs. Even I loved him running at the end of the first half and getting down to run the clock down to the 4, such a smart move. Like, thinking of that on the run was awesome. The only one I question is when he had the design run to the right, had a reverse field, you had Mooney had the guy and Moore had the other guy. I thought he could have got way more yards or potentially take it, and he decides to just go down. I was like, "Ugh."
I don't blame him for trying to make a play there. Anytime somebody reverses field. So it's totally just my perspective from draft film. But when you watch a bunch of draft film, you see guys pull that stuff off, right? Like they'll reverse field, they'll run it all the
Yeah,
way back around. You go, no way. As you're watching the tape the
yeah,
first time, they get the edge and they bend it. In the NFL, that is nearly always a recipe to lose an extra 5 yards.
yeah.
Like it's
No, I was okay with the decision, but then he decided to
totally.
kinda go down. Like, why not run and try and get way more?
For all we know, he ran out of gas. Like
That could
he's
be.
been playing the game the whole time, running all that distance is it's a
That's
lot.
true.
And so I don't know. I have no idea. I just assume that if a quarter or I always assume that if a player sees daylight, they're probably gonna take it. Like there's the whole running back vision thing, but that was pretty wide open. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right,
So
I thought it was too, unless he was worried Moore was gonna get a block in the back, which Moore was kind of iffy on. He was
right.
kind of just doing this.
And
Um, here's here's some fun things. So just transitioning a little bit. So here's his 17 game pace is 3,886 yards passing, 37 passing touchdowns, 17 interceptions, 95.1 QB passer rating. And over the last 2 games, He has a 67.1 completion percentage, 617 yards, 9.6 yards per attempt, 8 touchdowns, and 1 pick with a 131 passer rating. And that's including tonight ton of throwaways and batted balls that like really just like I mean in theory I get that they count, but like he's not real. I mean, those suck, you know.
And that's the thing, right? So first of all, it's hilarious how much one game can change things because I actually don't ask me why. For some reason, enough people tweeted his 4 game projection that I cannot believe I can tell you this, but I actually have it memorized. Where
Ooh,
the 4 game projection after last week was 3690 as opposed to,
38-86,
so we're up another 200 yards. It was 29 passing touchdowns as opposed to,
37,
it was 21 interceptions as opposed to,
17.
so we're decidedly trending in the right direction. And
Mhm.
I mean, there's a point where, God forbid, like already you're talking 30 freaking 7 passing touchdowns. Like you get to that point and you may rattle the cage for a certain well, you probably have to win at least 6, 7 games to honestly have a shot at MVP. Like just to make
Mhm.
it so clear what I'm angling towards. But all the same, it's a hell of a season. Now we're
Mhm.
2 games into the good trend after
Yep.
3 games of the bad trend. So we got to give it a little bit of time. And frankly, just pointing it out because I'm a scarred Bears fan, Nick. If he does ball out against Vikings and then balls out against the Raiders, I would still like to see him ball out at least a little bit against the meat grinder schedule
I got
that
you,
we
yeah.
get after that.
Yep.
But like it's not going to be that difficult. Like, fingers crossed, I don't embarrass myself saying this. It's not going to be that difficult to ball out against Detroit if you showed that you can be consistent against some of these other defenses. They're
Mhm.
not all the cream of the crop, but the Bears
No.
don't really, I mean, if I'm seeing it correctly, the Bears don't really have that like creme de la creme defense on their schedule, right? Like,
So let's
nearly their entire schedule is, I don't want to say they're all soft defensively, but
well,
by and large.
we got one heavy hitter. So I'll go through it quickly. And then I have some more positivity to kind of talk
And
through.
we haven't gotten to the defense yet, but we'll get
Right,
there.
exactly. Yeah. So we are home against Minnesota, terrible defense.
Terrible
Home
defense.
against the Raiders, bad defense.
Yeah,
At
right.
Chargers, terrible defense.
Yep.
At Saints, I would say solid
I
to
think that's a
good.
really good defense. Their offense sucks. And
Right.
especially if Carr like the AC joint sprain worsens, but that's a whole
Yeah.
separate discussion.
And then home against the Panthers, which I would say just middle of the road.
Their
At Detroit,
offense their offense takes juice out of their defense, man.
yeah,
Like that's
yeah,
one of those like what's the opposite of complementary football? Like vampiric football? Like their
yeah.
offense is so
Well,
bad.
kind of used to be Chicago, right? You had
Oh,
this great
yeah.
defense, and the offense couldn't keep them off the field.
Right.
Um, then at Detroit, at Minnesota, home against Detroit, and then here's the good one, at Cleveland,
Oh yeah.
and then Arizona, Atlanta, and then at the end of the year against Green Bay.
And I am not saying Fields has to play great in all of those. I'm not even saying necessarily that Fields has to play like, I don't know, like really good in all of those. But I'll tell you what, Nick, just pointing it out, okay? If Chicago gets the number 1 overall pick, the decision might nearly be written in the stars. Fields would probably have to throw for 4,000 yards. And even then, it's still a conversation just
Mhm.
off of the rookie contract clock. But man, Nick, it won't take much for the Bears to end up with, if Fields goes off, the number 3 pick from Carolina and the number 11 pick from themselves. And at that point, Fields versus QB3, completely separate discussion.
Well, this is what we talked about too. Is like if he becomes like the Justin Herbert, right? Like terrible defense, you're not winning a ton of games, maybe you make the playoffs, maybe you don't, but you put up crazy good numbers, it changes the narrative. And I think that's what you're leading into.
Right. And so either way, it's gotta we gotta keep it up a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But once you start putting some of these games on tape, so like you gotta remember that for anybody listening to this point, the hardest thing about the talking about Mitch Trubisky, just going all the way back, because this is the comparison that everybody keeps making. Okay. So I'm really not afraid to talk about like let's compare Justin, let's compare Mitch.
Yeah.
Everybody can see that Justin has a higher ceiling. We have nearly never gotten there. Like we haven't really even gotten close. We got the rookie version of him against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and 2 years later, people were still bringing it up after week 1, week 2. I was bringing it up. I think we were bringing it up. I'm just like, where is that guy? And
Yeah.
we're getting closer. Like
Well,
Denver,
these are his best 2 games, maybe in his career. You could argue maybe
right?
Miami last year, best 2 games of his career back to back now.
And I think it's so funny because I would argue that this game, I mean, it had phenomenal results, but like, hear me out, everybody. I thought Fields was as close as you'll get to the game manager version of Fields that still flashed the arm. There are a
Yep.
lot of games that a lot of really good quarterbacks play just like this. Every year, Patrick Mahomes is going to have a game where he doesn't really have to do much, but his team makes plays around him and somebody else gets all the credit. Brock Purdy, he's going to have these games. Lamar Jackson, he's going to have these games. It
Yep.
is normal to have a game where you run a healthy offense and the rest of your teammates lift up your statistics because that's what good quarterbacking is. But the big problem we had with Fields compared to Mitch was that Mitch had a Pro Bowl. Doesn't matter if he was the 6th alternate. He had a Pro Bowl. Mitch had a playoff appearance. Doesn't matter
Yep.
if it was the defense that brought him there. He had a playoff appearance.
2, I believe, right? Did he have 2 of them?
Well, technically, when we were in like 2019, the second
Right.
one hadn't happened yet.
Right.
But you're totally right. Exactly. So Fields, this is his 6th win. I mean, wins aren't a QB stat, and I understand that. But
Yep.
especially, Nick, when we were teetering on the edge of like the Bears blowing this game, I remember
Mhm.
saying to a friend of mine, I don't think this is Fields' fault. Like, even less so than Denver, where Denver, at least there's like an offensive turnover that turns into a touchdown really,
Yeah.
really hurts. But with this one, pretty much spotless. Like, you can't blame him out instead of blaming the entire offensive unit. So if he's the quarterback of a team that blows this game twice, like especially in back-to-back weeks, what do you say? And then he's not. He's the quarterback that throws a strike. It could have just been a first down. Who cares? The fact that
Yep.
it turned into a touchdown is neat. But if you told me that he finished that day with 244, like 240-ish some odd yards, like 3 scores, 50 on the ground, thumbs up, man.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
really strong Thursday night performance. Look at what Joe Burrow's doing. Like, look at what Derek Carr does half these weeks, right? Like,
Yeah, and this is it's prime time in front of everybody. This was an interesting tweet that I put out September 29th, and I keep bringing it up because I like to pat myself on the back. So, and I don't know if I brought this up on the pod yet, but I did some research and I said Justin Fields might just be a slow starter in the NFL.
right.
And his rookie year, his worst 2 quarterback passing rating games were weeks 2 and 3. The second year, 2 of his 3 worst games were weeks 2 and 3. I'm like, what if his second and third games against Tampa Bay and Kansas City were his worst 2 games of this season? And now he's starting to crush it. So it literally is possible. Maybe he's just a slow starter.
I mean, it could be. And again, we're 2 games into the other direction, but sue us. That's all we have to work off of.
Right.
And especially since I would argue that Fields just played the hardest defense that between Denver, Washington, Vegas, and Minnesota, that's the hardest defense he's going to get over the next couple games. Now, it doesn't mean that he's going to throw for 400 yards next weekend. Like, it'd be great, but I doubt it, right? But it's just looking at the picture as clearly as we can, I guess, Nick, and being like, no, this was good. And
Yep.
it was holistically good. And things get tough. We've talked about this in the preseason, but things get tough with the rookie quarterback contract because next year would be Fields' year 4. And you better be ready to push for a championship. And how do you navigate potentially firing the head coach? I mean, look, let me ask you this. Do you still want to fire Matt Eberflus?
Yes.
So how do we navigate this? Right? Because
I don't think he's a solution. The defense isn't a solution.
no, I don't. I completely agree with you. I honestly think that just to segue into the defense a little bit, that Sam Howell is just a roller coaster. Like,
Can I tell you one other offensive thing
yeah,
first?
give it to me. Give it to me.
So DJ Moore 17 game pace.
Oh, it's crazy.
So it's crazy, but there's one thing that makes it even more crazy. Okay. So 92 receptions, 1,805 yards, 17 touchdowns. So that right there insane, right?
Right.
But but players that put up numbers like that have 150, 160, 180 targets. DJ Moore's on pace for 116 targets. Like that is stupid. Like that would be the most efficient season in history by like a mile. So we need to get him more targets.
You know, you almost make it sound, Nick, like DJ Moore is in fact on the level of Stephon Diggs, is in fact on the level of AJ Brown. Like,
Hmm,
maybe not
hmm.
literally, because that's the thing, man. Because there are so many people that want to look at a guy like Stephon Diggs, who's just this route technician, beautiful separator. And they look at him and they say, wow, he rules. Because they've seen that archetype win. That's AB, right?
Yep,
That's so many receivers throughout history. And then what's the other archetype people love? The huge dude that's
yep,
pretty good at running routes.
yep.
That's
Mike
AJ Brown.
Evans. Yep, yep.
Physical dominator. Yeah, or like Mike Evans. People keep wanting to tell each other that that's Justin Jefferson, even though Justin's kind of his own guy, right?
Yeah, he's a great
DJ
route runner.
Moore is the Debo model, and everybody underrates the wide receiver that's secretly a running back, right? The guy who is just untackleable when it comes to the way DBs try to hit him because he's it's the one time that I can actually say with legitimate confidence, Nick, and I mean this, being somewhat shorter is a legit positive when it comes to your
Oh
wide
yeah,
receiver contact balance
yep,
because you're just so dense. And when you
yep,
drop your hips, you, like we've saw with tonight, twice, you'll put your arms on him, and when he spins around, you just fly off. Like DJ Moore roots himself in the ground and makes these run after catch plays that we were dreaming of him making with
mhm,
Fields. This rules. Like that kind of pace is insane, and it's the kind of pace, forgive me because this isn't what I think anybody would expect, that makes me say, yeah, you pair that guy with Marvin Harrison, you're done. Like you're done at receiver. You're fine. You're done. It's over. And you're good at receiver for another 3 years, whatever that looks like, whoever's throwing the ball. And
yep.
I don't know, things let's talk real fast just really quickly about the quarterback thing, right? I know we kind of been alluding to it, but let's talk very directly about it, right? Nick, where are you at on the how much do you want Caleb Williams? How much do you think it's risky? I know there's at least one Bears listener out there that is trying to figure out how they feel about the fact that they were out. Now they feel like they can easily get back in again, but they've been
Yeah,
burned by this before. It
yep,
felt awfully, whether good or bad, we didn't know, but it felt at least like a clean, decisive cut to be
mhm,
done at 0 and 5. And now they're not. Now they're 1
yep,
and 4. And if this Bears team shows up, who knows? They could be 3 and 4 in
yep.
2 weeks' time. So how do you feel about getting back into the uncertainty pool? Do you like the uncertainty pool? Do you think that there's a viable way to come out of this with Justin Fields as a franchise quarterback? Or honestly, do you feel like it's gonna take even more than what we're seeing right now?
Well, obviously, like I don't know that he can keep this pace up because throwing for 4 touchdowns every game is going to be pretty ridiculous. But um, okay, Caleb Williams is amazing. Like, I mean, me and you, we do film.
He's a
I've
star.
done college prospects for a long time. He's amazing. His talent level. There's probably 5 quarterbacks right now that I can name that I would take over him. So this isn't just like a Justin Fields thing. This is like I have um I would take him over CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
And CJ Stroud is balling right now, but
Hmm.
like he's not at that level. And you see, I mean, Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, I'd still take Herbert over him. Like there's a few, and then I would take Williams. So that's where I'm at with that. But the biggest issue for Chicago, and we're seeing this right now, is last year he didn't have weapons, right?
Right.
Offensive line. We're seeing some of that. The year before, like now he has a legit receiver, and you're like, man, is this what it would have looked like if Allen Robinson didn't like quit on the Bears?
And I mean,
Or, like this that's what I'm going through in my mind. So for
right.
me, I want to build, no matter what, the structure so it can be Brock Purdy'd. He doesn't have to be a superhero. He can dump. He's got guys. You can scheme things. The team around him will help win games. And doesn't have to be the quarterback having to throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns to win a game.
Right. And I mean, what gets complicated, of course, is what do you, I mean, the other thing about this is that like the number one pick was never a guarantee. We were always 4 weeks into the season. Like
Mhm.
life comes at you fast, right? And for all we know, Carolina could not win a game all season. But going back to something you said earlier, because I just realized that I did get lost, but now I remember what I was going to say, is we another one of those double standards we talked about. Like corners are good, no they're not. Or rookie corners are good, no they're not. Rookie quarterbacks are good, no they're not. Quarterbacks with no weapons are unilaterally bad. You don't see any quarterbacks that really play star football outside of maybe Mahomes, if you want to go there. But
Right. I mean,
people
I mean, I
were
mean, yeah, yeah. Because I was gonna say Herbert, his rookie year, balled out, but he had Keenan Allen and Mike
he had
Williams.
stars. Austin Eckler. Austin
Yeah,
Eckler was balling in that rookie year.
yeah.
Like, and so then in first 2 games of this season, suddenly the Chiefs don't score more than 20 in back-to-back weeks
Mhm,
because Travis
mhm.
Kelsey's not healthy, and people start going, has Mahomes lost the touch? Come on, people.
Yep,
But
yep.
so Bryce Young, for instance, looks awful. And my
Terrible.
brother, crazy as he is, was like, well, I actually like Nico Collins. And when I talked to him about the Stroud thing, like, I think Stroud's balling, but it is hilarious when you look around the league. Josh Allen, his second year, pretty pedestrian, gets Stephon Diggs, goes on a tear. And DJ Moore in this game. I mean, this was no doubt in my mind, because we have to do, especially as we Bears fans heal whatever that looks like from our quarterback scars, we have to be able to have games where we go, DJ Moore did that. And kudos to Justin Fields for giving DJ Moore the opportunity to do that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
DJ Moore's first star of the game, so to speak. And
Mhm,
and that's fine. Because we are in this place where we're gonna hyper criticize Fields for everything, right?
mhm.
Assuming that every other quarterback in the NFL does things super great every time.
They
Mahomes
don't.
is going to have a game just like he had against the Jets, where I mean, the guy's throwing picks left
Yeah.
and right.
Well, Joe Burrow threw 3 picks against the Bears. Remember that game?
Joe Burrow, yeah, and that was his good season. I thought you were going to talk
Yeah.
about this season, but like season he ends up going to the Super Bowl, he throws 3 picks in 3 plays. 3 picks in 3 plays. I've never seen it before.
Yep.
But so within that, like I do think that there's an aspect here of like we have to get outside of our own heads where we say, well, this is who Fields is, when roughly 25 of the data that 25 games worth of the data that we have with Fields, he didn't have an NFL standard offense around him.
No.
And you could argue he still doesn't have like an NFL great offense around him, but hot damn, if your offensive line can play like that week in, week out, you got a pretty good team.
Well,
And
what you would think better. You think with Jenkins maybe starting the whole game and having rapport then with them, and then I haven't heard anything on Braxton Jones, but if he comes back, then it's at least the starters you intended to have.
right. And
So it could get better.
I mean, it's not a bunch of great defenses. And you and I could sit here and fret about what Fields going to do when he plays San Francisco. Don't bring up week 1 like last year. What's like you and I could sit here and fret like what's Fields going to do when he plays like good defense beat the Cowboys would be another defense. Like, it's so funny because all the good defenses that I can name, Fields has a recent game where he like either beat them or played really well against them. You know,
Miami, you want to bring them up?
well, are they good though? Are they on defense?
They're not bad. They got Vic. They're not doing bad. Now they just lost to
They just got
Buffalo.
hung 41 on them.
It's Buffalo.
But totally. Like it's more just funny looking at this thing where I mean, when people like you and me end week 1 and we say the best part about week 1 is that it's one game and he's got a whole season and everybody
Yep.
goes, Field sucks. You got to be kidding me. Like it's over.
He's a running back.
It's the point where I believe it after week 3. And I'm like, man, this thing's probably headed in the wrong direction. What
Yeah.
a terrible season.
Yeah.
Like, at least we've got some positivity to look forward to in the draft. No, he gets 17 for a reason. Now, before we get to the defense, I know, but I'm just dying to talk about this. How do you navigate a season where you potentially fire Eberflus while Justin Fields still potentially proves he's the answer? Like, if Eberflus goes on to continue giving up 25 in nearly every game, but beyond our wildest expectations, Fields pulls wins out anyways in some
Yeah.
of these games. Do you still fire the guy
Yes.
who's now in his second year?
Yes. Because
Maybe not you. Does George McCaskey still fire the
he's not in
guy?
charge. George is in charge. Marty Schottenheimer got fired after winning 13 or 14 regular season games. Guys can get moved on from. Ray Rhodes got fired from Green Bay after he was 8-8 or 9-7 one year. Like there's times when it's like, hey, this just isn't working, regardless of what the outcome is. Or sometimes you hang with a guy actually, like, you know what, I see it working, even though we're not winning games. But right now, none of those things are going together. Eberflus, on a night when it wasn't warm, was sweating bullets. The second, he was like, "Oh my gosh, someone please make a play! I need to win a game." Like you saw it, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, I thought they were totally going to lose. Like
Yeah,
this team has a real problem where when it rains, man, it pours.
yep.
And we saw it against Denver in the most obvious fashion, where it's almost like the team's looking up at the scoreboard wondering when they're going to lose, where they go, "Gee, for a game where we're supposed to lose, we're up by an awful lot, huh? Hope nothing goes wrong."
Yep.
And then obviously you invite disaster. I mean, obviously we still hate, I assume, I'm going to rope you in on this. We still hate a lot of the third down defense. We still don't love a lot of their edge rushers. Andrew Billings made a huge play to open the game on that
Gosh, I
third and
love that
inches
guy.
where he
He's made
just, I know,
multiple plays. I'm like, I love that guy.
what a guy, right? Number
Yeah.
97.
Well, you know what? The one thing is, like, he's really good at disrupting and getting in there and run stuffing and whatever. He made the tackles
Mhm.
tonight because that was one of the things he didn't finish the tackles. He actually made the tackles,
He
which
gets coffee tonight because he was closing.
yeah. You
Like,
know, one thing though, and this is just like at the end of the game, like we're teeing off and we're getting the sacks, which is just odd for us. And then Rasheem Green got one. I was like, man, Rasheem Green even got a sack tonight. Like, this is like, what is going on?
oh, it was the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Like the whole game, especially that first half, was like literally, Nick. I'm not even playing. You go back, you listen to our pregame pod, and somebody comes in and in an unfortunate accident, they somehow see a Bears jersey and they think it's the Commanders for the entire game. So therefore they have interpreted the game with the jerseys flipped. It would have been equally believable.
Oh yeah.
Like a game where the Bears offense gets stuck in the mud immediately and Howell just walks up and down the field against some
Mhm.
terrible Bears corners, lofting deep ball after deep ball. I would have figured, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
What
Now, if we're talking about some hope here, okay? Because there's some more negative. We'll talk about the Bears defense. There's so much of it to do. If we want to talk about a little bit of hope, we have extended break here till we play the Vikings, which again we talked about that extra time really favors teams to win the next game. I think it's like 58%, right? And they're at home. There's a good chance Jalen Johnson is back.
when they need him,
Eddie Jackson is back.
probably need him too.
I haven't heard anything. It's possible Kyler Gordon is back. Your intended secondary could be starting by next week, which was monumental because I knew who they were because we do this, but it's just like, who are those guys that are out there right now? Like, and also Sam Howell, who always throws to the right, by the way, which I noticed this. I don't know if you noticed it. Like he always throws to the right. Just keep throwing the 5-yard hitch or 5-yard out, man. They're bailing. Jalen Jones isn't going to make a play.
Seriously. I mean, he looked like, because Eddie Jackson came out. I'm shocked. I am shocked. The Bears won a game where their safety, who was not playing, walked out and said, "Yeah, I mean, we're just going to try to shift things up on the back end because Sam Howell's not really too good at reading defenses." And I was like, "What? You said
Yeah.
that? Like out
Shots
loud?"
fired. Shots fired.
Like, shots fired, but that's like that bulletin board material. I feel like teams have a horrible record when they give their opponent bulletin board material, but that's totally anecdotal. And so, oh, forgive me, it's almost midnight. Can't you tell?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so
So by the way, just because I was curious, because he
right.
ended up with like some numbers, but garbage time too. Howell threw the ball 51 times. He was 37 of 51, 388 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick, and sacked 5 times. By the way, they charted Fields with 3 sacks, by the way. Again, it happened where it was a designed run and it's tackle near the line of scrimmage, sack. I'm like, that is BS.
Man, even if Like 3 sacks on a 10% sack rate for Fields would be pretty normal
It,
compared to
it was
his
three
14% sack rate.
3 sacks for 9 yards only.
Yeah, I mean it's not bad, especially
Yeah.
since against this defensive line, it's so funny. You looked at the game plan; it felt as if the game plan was to stretch wide receivers deep and take deep shots. If they're there, great. If they're not, then you either have your zone answer or you just throw it away. And
How many? You're right. How many? I'm just curious if you looked, but how many rushing yards do you think Brian Robinson had this game?
oh man, I thought you were going to tell me Fields. I knew that. Brian Robinson, did he have one?
He has 10 yards on 6 carries.
Man, that is awful. That's the thing, though. You and I talked about this. The Bears defense, kind of spicy against the run, have
Yeah.
been all season long. The
Mhm.
only runner that I watched legitimately gash them it wasn't Pacheco. It wasn't even AJ Dillon. It's Aaron Jones. And I don't know why Aaron Jones didn't get the
Well,
ball more in that game.
Jaleel McClellan or last week too. No one could tackle that guy.
Nobody could tackle him, but like, especially in a game like that was so up and back, I couldn't help but feel like Aaron Jones was the guy where you were teed up to stop him, and you still didn't. Whereas with
Yeah, no,
McClellan,
you're right. Yeah, I'll give you
especially at
that.
that point, he was eating up rushing yards in a game where they were down 2 scores.
Eh,
I would have let anybody eat up rushing yards there.
let's get into something that's negative on the defense.
Yeah, let's.
Can they tackle? Well, and they're okay, all of them. And then Tremaine Edmonds. Come on, bro.
Yikes.
You got to do something at some point here. Tackle
Yeah,
somebody.
yeah. Tremaine Edmonds is he's kind of
Struggle
struggling.
bus.
He's kind of struggling, and I mean,
Like you're reverting back to that second, third year guy that we were like, that's not him. And now it's like maybe that's who you are. But
I
I think TJ Edwards is playing well still.
I can't help but think that a lot of the teams or a lot of the guys that are playing well are guys who are either in relatively niche down roles. So that's like Greg Stroman, right?
Mhm.
Or it's guys who have been coached by somebody else. I hate putting it that way. But like Andrew Billings is a mercenary from all over the place. And Tremaine Edmonds played on one team. TJ Edwards is a UDFA who's with one of the best coaching staffs ever. You can tell Tremaine Edmonds is the one who played a specific role in a different defense
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
else, may not be adapting like we would have hoped he would.
Well, Demarcus Walker played well again tonight, I thought.
Right. And I mean, kudos to him. I really expected 72, good old Charles Leno, to be a little bit more of a lockup guy, but
Yeah.
the Bears got hit, or the Bears got theirs, and Sam held onto the ball forever for most of the game.
He did.
Forever. Like it's one of those where you knew he was going to, but man.
And then they ended up with 5 sacks. They should have had 8 or 9. They
Oh
couldn't
my
tackle
goodness.
him.
He looked
It
like
was
Ben
ridiculous.
Roethlisberger for a minute
I
there.
know. And here's one thing, okay? I've been critical of Flus and whatnot, you know. I got to give him this. It didn't always work. He dialed up some blitzes. It's like, what is this blitz? Like I saw the linebackers mugged up and then they faked going
Finally.
back and then came. I was like,
Finally.
yes.
Finally, they used
Yep.
like mug fronts and like normal defense. They did this against Washington last year too, where
Mhm.
Alan Williams suddenly picked Washington to empty the mag with cool defensive stuff.
Yeah,
And
whatever.
and then they shut Carson Wentz out. And the week after that, I can't remember who they played, but they abandoned it all, went back to stale like stuff, and they liked it. Now, one thing I thought was really interesting, a defensive coach friend of mine pointed out that Washington must really, really like what the Bears checked to on empty because they ran empty the entire second half. And I
Yeah.
mean, I think there was a point where the Commanders hadn't even run the ball once in the second half. They just went
Mhm.
straight college style spread option passing.
Yeah,
And
that's what I wanted Chicago to do.
as
When you
they
don't have a running back and you're like, how's this going to go? Spread them out. You can even, I don't care. You can put Tunyon or Lewis, attach him, and you want to have like basically 6 O linemen, whatever. Like, but go empty, make them declare, right? And then pick your matchup.
totally. And for whatever reason, I mean, I think it could be easily like it could be anything from comfort to this or that. Like Fields isn't all the way there yet, and that's fine because
Mhm.
if we could, we talked about this way back in the week 2 post game pod, where one of the most frustrating parts about watching Fields in that game was that there were times where read 1 was open and we didn't throw the ball, and it was like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? Like
Mhm.
you maybe I want a quarterback that can get to read 4 because sometimes I can be, I can basically fall in love with backup quarterbacks, to be completely honest with you. Like, you have no idea how in on Nick Foles I was. I mean, the guy won some crazy games in Chicago. That's not a conversation we're getting into on
Well,
this pod.
and the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah, obviously everybody knows about the Super Bowl, but I'm even saying the Chicago tenure wasn't as bad as some people make it out to be. But the point is, if Fields can,
Now you got me going down that. Remember that Atlanta comeback?
oh my gosh, not just the Atlanta comeback. The one I always point to is that in the middle of a dead loss season with nothing going right, Fields, or what was it, Foles and wide receiver 1 Jameer Byrd went into Seattle and ripped the Seahawks' hearts out.
Wasn't there snow too?
Snow. It took the 3rd and 14 post up to Jimmy Graham. Then you had to hit the 2-point conversion to
oh my gosh, this is
nutty game.
There's 3 listeners right now. They're like, oh, I remember that game, and everyone's like, I blocked that part of my memory out.
A lot of Bears quarterbacks have come in and looked like Trevor Siemian. Let me just put it that way. Where they came in, they played one game, it was freaking terrible.
Cordell Stewart,
Nick Foles beat Tampa in a Bears uniform. Nick Foles came back against Atlanta.
He beat Tom Brady.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That overtime New Orleans game, they were Roquan Smith catching that pick 6 away from winning. There were a bunch of those. That's a separate conversation. With Fields, to go back to it, if we can hit a point where we can run double slant, and if Fields doesn't like it, because did you see this? We ran double slant. Fields didn't throw it. I wouldn't be surprised if it was open. Tom Brady open. But Luke Getsy had figured out that they're going to follow the guy. And so if you run double slant and they leave, roll out and take the yards. And that was a 12-yard run. And we ran it on time. That is a run within structure. That's using Justin Fields in a way that plays to his strengths. And I mean, going back to talking about, I'm not saying Fields is Russell Wilson, because this looked similar, but not exactly the same as some of those old Russell Wilson games. But Nick, Russ didn't develop as a passer until year 4, year 5. The let Russ cook era came later. And so there actually are precedents, if you dig deep enough, for quarterbacks blossoming pretty late as passers in the league.
Well, Ben Roethlisberger was basically just a check down guy, great defense, run the ball, until later on when he got some receivers and they needed him to throw.
Everybody remembers Aaron Rodgers at his peak, Matt Stafford at his peak, Matt Ryan at his peak, Tom Brady at their peak, Peyton Manning at their peak, all the people that you think of that you go, well, that guy doesn't look like him. Yeah, partially because we always hold him up to the standard of a 9-year NFL vet. That's the whole problem with a rookie quarterback. Bryce Young comes in, people call him a quote unquote coverage genius. And I'm like, he's a rookie. He hasn't seen Jesse Bates move in disguise. And then he didn't. And Jesse picked off 2 passes in his first game against Atlanta. The point being that if you and I, Nick, see not just sustained high level play, the statistics over the last 2 weeks, totally there. And up against Minnesota and Las Vegas, they may still be there. But we actually had pretty decent statistics against Green Bay too, right? Yep. Statistics can lie to you. Where in that game he had 215, a couple rushing yards, I think 2 touchdowns and a pick. But anybody who watched the game would not say that that's exactly what they saw on tape, right?
Yep.
And so it'll be I'm super interested to see what happens. Fields was without a doubt a huge part of the offense. We threw a touchdown over the middle of the dang field in the end zone. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
On time. Yeah. And so here's where it goes right now, because I mentioned this before, but now with Tevin back, I mean, I feel way better about the run game, which will blend together everything. And with the DBs, they're going to have 10 days. They'll be back. At least 2 of them should be back. Because if not, they would have went on IR. So to me, I think they were close and they'll be back. Now, when you start looking at some of these games like Minnesota, the Raiders, obviously the Panthers, I mean, maybe Saints. I mean, heck, maybe Chargers. Who knows? You go down the list, you're like, we might have some more wins here. And like you said, 3-3.
You just put up 28 points and you lost by 3. And then you put up 40. What'd you say?
Sorry, I said 3-3. I said 3-4.
3-4. You put up 40, and in fact, you did not lose. Like, to me, if there's something to be said here, I have never seen this before, Nick, because traditionally, when the Chicago Bears choose to receive the opening kickoff, it is a death knell. Like,
Yep.
I bet you've seen it too. I have seen the Bears do this before, where they do the whole Matt Hasselbeck, we want the ball and we're gonna score, and it ends just like it did for Hasselbeck
That was
nearly
bad.
every time. I mean, nearly every time. This game, lo and behold, Nick, I actually think we saw a football game where the Bears wanted the ball, they scored. Sam Howell put them in a third and inches, and Andrew Billings made a massive play. The
Mhm.
Bears took the ball, they went down, they kicked a field goal,
Yep.
which suddenly now Sam Howell's down 10 points. They go 3 and out. Those happen. Bears score again, and from that
Touchdown.
moment, I would argue the Bears stole another 2 stops out of the half off of just pressure. Your
Yes.
offense can play a little
Yes.
defense for you. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and honestly, what along with pressure is this is something that we have not seen, and I would say for a while. I mean, you could say a year because we haven't won, but confidence, right? We saw
Right.
Fields and Moore and the offense, honestly, today playing with confidence because they built off of last week. The defense, well, like the whole team won a game. Santos was perfect. Like you could, Gill had a pretty good punt. I thought, like everyone, if they build
Way to get
up,
that Trenton Gill mention in.
hunters are people too. So you want to like keep building confidence. Like we've just been like just beat down, Allen Williams stuff, Chase Claypool stuff. You lose to Green Bay to start the year, like all this negative. Now you start getting some positive. You don't know what can come from that, And this
Right.
could this be a 2022 Lions story? As long as you have the quarterback that's, and I'm going to say it, special, you don't know what could happen.
I mean, you don't, right? And it's awesome that we saw this. I think quarterbacks come in all kinds of different flavors, and if there's anything that Fields, I'm gonna be really interested to see what happens when Fields eventually faces a defense like the Chargers, and the Chargers are bad, so that may not be the best
Yeah.
example here, right? But a too high base defense, and this was a too high base defense. Somehow the Bears still got people running wide open left and right, and I'm a
Mhm.
scrub. And while I love the all 22, I am a sucker for wanting to know what happened on every play. I'm the guy who still looks at Twitter, even though Brad Biggs is going to beat me to it. Because you know what? If he's going to tweet that DJ Moore's about to score a touchdown, yeah, I want to know before it happens. So,
Yep.
that's who I am. So
I
I
don't
did
care.
not watch this with Prime Vision. I'll probably go back and see if I can find the Prime Vision broadcast just for a quick look at the all 22, because I don't know how you feel, Nick. I'm dying to know how they got so many guys
Yeah.
so open.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, you want to see if they evolve. But here's the other thing too about confidence. Like maybe it's a gutsy thing, like because after the first couple games last year, the New England game happened, and we started getting some confidence in terms of Getsy was dealing and shifting the offense to Fields' strengths, and that's happening again. Like so, you're like it could be all dialed up well right now.
And like you talked about, I mean, Fields did start really slow in 2022. We had
Hmm.
some hard conversations around that Texans game because it was terrible.
Yep.
There's no changing that it was terrible. We just put the pieces back together afterwards. And I think one of the most interesting plays in this game, seriously, it's so boring. It's one of the most dull plays in this game, was that zone throw to Cole Kmet, because he had to buzz it between two underneath zone defenders, which he has flat out not been doing.
Yep.
Like if he has even tried it, it's gotten picked off. And so we completed it. How tight was the coverage? What did Fields see? These are things that I know I want to review,
Yep.
because if we can start to taper down some of those, if we can, Russ Wilson did not attack the middle every game. In fact, Russ mostly avoids the middle,
Well,
generally speaking.
He can't see.
Right.
The-
And it's unsafe over there. But so long as we avoid Kansas City style interceptions, or God forbid, week 1 style interceptions where we throw straight into a linebacker, if we
Mhm.
can get over the middle, even vaguely, that's going to be a real boon for a Bears offense that right now is getting way, way, way down the sidelines, because the more you start to see cover 4 and cover 3, that tries to limit the Bears' big plays, the more you're going to have room underneath to pick up 5 yards, pick up 8 yards, pick up some of the first down conversions that are so unbelievably frustrating when Sam Howell hits a receiver at the 5, or like hits a receiver 5 yards downfield and he turns up field, breaks a tackle, dives between two defenders, picks up a 3rd and 13. Don't ask me about it.
And it's a tight end.
Oh,
It's a tight end.
gosh, even worse.
Yeah. Well, also that's again, if they start backing off, that's running lanes too. I think the one thing too right now that gives hope is that, and again, it's a 2-game
They
sample size.
scored
The
40
Panthers
points. There's
playing
not just
awesome.
one thing that gives them
Right.
hope.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But two games of playing awesome is this is now giving us a feel of the Justin Fields we saw in Ohio State out of college. Like
Right.
this guy who he didn't run in college that much. He threw and he was just on and he was really accurate and he was on time and he took deep shots. Like this is kind of that guy. And so
It is.
again, if you put three of them together, it could be a lot of hype.
I don't know how you would do it. I don't. But if there's some weird world where the Bears can end up with just low enough of a record that firing Flus is an afterthought, but Fields can play well enough where he kind of ruins the draft spot, like it's not the most definitive answer in the world. We won't know if Fields is the dude until new coach comes in, but that would be awesome. if if the Bears, because I am a little worried, lowercase w worried, and I promise I'm not being negative for negative sake, that Fields redeeming himself and becoming the Bears franchise quarterback might save Flus's job outright just because he's connected to a good thing. I don't
But
know.
but honestly, if that happens, I'm not sure that I care because we have a quarterback. So
That
either
would be
way,
great.
no matter what happens here, I feel like we're gonna get a quarterback because I mean, with even if our record gets better, Carolina is likely going to be bad. So either you're going to get that guy or Fields has proven enough, and in the end, that's what we need. So
It
so
is, but the defense has to be better if we're going to compete.
yeah,
Like that's the only thing. Is I so philosophically disagree with the defense because that's the thing. Like for anybody listening, there were multiple on the 2-point conversion, on multiple 3rd downs plays where Kirk Herbstreit is sitting there saying, "I mean, this is totally open. I don't know why he didn't throw it, but
dude,
for some reason he
so
didn't."
the 2-point conversion, I thought they were banjoing that. Is that what you thought?
I didn't look that hard. I saw
Because
enough open space where if Howard stepped into it and ripped it, I think he could
well,
have made
because
it work.
so for people so banjoing is like when there's two receivers out there, there's two DBs or defenders, whatever, and the outside guy will take the guy that breaks out, inside guy will take the guy that breaks inside, and so they'll pass things off because all those pick routes and stuff. And I thought Hicks was like at the end, he was like, I thought you were going to take the outbreaking route, and that's why he hesitated to take that slant because I thought they were going to pass it off, and he didn't. So like again, with guys that have barely played, you're going to have
You're gonna get those
miscommunication like that.
100%. And I mean, I can see this disturbing world where Matt Eberflus goes, well, come on. Chris Jones is about to hit free agency, and we've got the money to pay him. And then you know what? You get me like a Dallas Turner, you get me a Chop Robinson, you get me a Jared Verse. Like, just you wait till you see this defense.
Latu, I like him from
Yeah,
UCLA.
except I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna be like, no, 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 don't run this defense. like it, but that's a conversation for another day. To me, at least, it did feel like, all right, let me ask you this, because we're starting to hit late enough that we'll get into follow or final thoughts here fairly soon. But
Yeah.
do you feel like on the defensive side of the ball, the Bears defense won, the Commanders defense lost? Where do you feel like the balance lies?
There's 0% chance the Bears defense won. I think that the Bears defense just like didn't mess up at the same rate that they've messed up earlier this season. And I think the Commanders defense definitely lost. I mean, you want to think of watching all 22. You're telling me that we couldn't throw in the second half, and they were beat up. The two guys left DB wise,
Right.
and they benched another guy. Like there were other lanes that were open. I mean, that DJ Moore down the sideline, another touchdown. The one that we just missed, DJ Moore on another one. Like they should have actually, I think, blown this wide open.
Well,
So I
sure.
think that the Commanders defense didn't stop us at all.
Oh, let me make sure we're talking about the same thing. The Bears defense and the Commanders offense.
Oh,
I may have said it backwards. And if I did, thank you for answering both now.
um,
Do you feel like the Bears defense won, or do you think the Commanders' defense or Commanders' offense lost?
Commanders offense lost.
That's how I feel. Like
100%.
it to me, it's not an accident, and I can't believe we didn't think about this in the pregame pod. But this is one of those things that when you see it, you know it, right?
Mm,
If we were going to rank the quarterbacks that the Bears have played in terms of how much of a clinician are they, Howell is fifth, and it's not close. Like even Love, who had that was his second start ever, and his first as a full time starter, was more of a clinician in terms of the way he goes through the reads, looks for what he's looking for, and distributes the football. It's not that surprising when you think about it that the guy who makes the most mistakes is the guy who's going to make the defense. It's just literally geared around we're going to let you make your mistakes look the best, right?
right.
And
Well, I
hey,
mean,
Greg
well,
Stroman's fumble, badass,
yeah,
and the pick, badass.
yeah.
Like
I mean, like when Howell had 388 passing yards, 99.1 QB passer rating, and we think it's a disappointment because when you look at the whatever just like off the street peasants they put in the DBs area, and then they're getting injured, you have to bring in other ones in, like it is ridiculous. So to we think that should be better. That gives you an indication of like how poorly we think that they played. Plus, a lot of that was in like time that didn't matter
I
either.
mean, we're talking about I assume it's a noontime game against the Minnesota Vikings.
Yep.
Like you talk about these stats, and every time you mention them, I sit there and I'm like, hot damn. The Bears season, I'll tell you what, Nick, over the last couple weeks, we're getting some stakes in these games. Like
Uh-huh.
Denver is do or die for both teams. And then just as we thought the Bears were dead and buried, they unburied themselves. So now you're going to have either a 2-win or worse, a 1-win Vikings team squaring up the Bears. And Kirk is so much better than Sam Howell.
Okay. Okay. Want me to give you a little hope though to end this?
Well, it's not about hope because that could be a shootout with a capital S.
Yes, yes,
Like,
but let me a little more. Okay. So we have the extra rest, right?
right,
Minnesota plays Kansas City this week at 3:25. So they have even less time to
right.
prepare.
It's it's gonna be awesome to see what happens from here. And I mean, this could be a wet and wild ride. Like we could end up in a real world. I can see it at least where maybe the touchdown numbers calm down because you got to okay. So I have never seen a team score this many passing touchdowns straight without a rushing touchdown. Have you?
No.
Neither have I. Like NFL teams are so goal line hungry when it comes to handing things to the running backs for obvious reason that I am shocked that the Bears have now passed 4 touchdowns in a row. Just doesn't seem like it happens all that often. But anyways, we could look at a season. I'm just ideating it where the Bears technically finish with a passer that throws for 4,000 yards, and also we don't win more than 5 games. Just because of, like, you could see a shootout with Vegas even at this point. Just because if Sam Howell can do it, Jimmy G, Justin Herbert, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, like, there's a lot of quarterbacks that fit the bill of the guys that are going to rip these defenses up, which is, I don't know, fine or not. It's it's a weird play. 1-4 is just such a weird record to talk about,
It
isn't it?
is. It
'Cause-
is. It is. And but plus like this is kind of like the best 1-4 that you can beat because your young quarterback is balling.
right.
And it's like if they like, oh, they lucked out because they had like 5 turnovers and it was a field goal game and then won by field goal, you'd be like,
And
you
that's the
just
other
blew
thing,
on
man.
somebody out.
Maybe there's another world. And if it happens, we'll revisit this and go, ah, damn. Right? But maybe there's a world where Field starts to make a habit of this outside rip to DJ Moore, and then it gets pick six in some big game, and we go,
Yeah.
oh, hell. Uh,
Yep. It could.
but tonight, none of these throws were turnover worthy. Like, at least from what I saw, nothing was risky within the way the Bears played it. Now, were there moments where one of my favorite plays, by the way, as I'll consider this my final thought, Fields has been a mess of a quarterback. We all love him. But when you go look at any advanced metric, his negative plays are way too negative, and they've been way too negative.
Yep.
Like the positives were always there. It was never a question of can he do the good thing. It was always a question of when will he stop doing the bad thing. Kansas City practically buried Fields about as, and I don't even want to know the stats that they didn't include when they said Fields over 4 seconds compared to Mahomes over 4 seconds.
Yep.
128 dropbacks for Justin Fields, 2 touchdowns, 42% sacks. And it was like, oh my God, that is
Yep.
so
Yep.
many sacks. Moving on. This game, I thought Fields did an exceptional job of staying out of trouble. We saw
Mhm.
him fling a ball to the sidelines that the NFL guy that was like, or the Thursday Night Football rules analyst immediately got huffy about and said it absolutely should have been intentional grounding. I thought it should have been too. That's why you just throw it sometimes. Because worst case scenario, okay, they're going to mark it at the sack, but they didn't. And the Bears scored on that drive, if
Yep.
memory serves. They needed every yard. And so I loved the play that was way too high, but Fields tipped the snap to himself, ran forward, and picked up a first down. Like, I loved the plays where he just got out of the pocket and threw the ball away. Like, Fields did a great job in this game of not making things worse for himself. So the moments where he fanned on accuracy, the moments where he didn't quite get the throw where he wanted them to, the moments where the referee didn't reward him, it became the offense's problem. Fields has had a habit to pivot off of where I'm going, of making himself look like the best player on the team. Because to be honest, he can kind of struggle sometimes at letting everybody else have their due. His play style being so like sack focused and hold the ball forever and run
Mhm.
around a lot and don't throw it until anybody's open can become very like if Fields isn't on, the whole offense is off. And
Yes.
in this
Yep.
game, my favorite thing about it, Fields didn't look all the way on, but he didn't have to. He did
No.
the things
No.
that he needed to do. He
He was
saved,
like he was glue at times.
right. He
He
was,
was, like, keeping it together because, like, there was
mhm,
the one drive when it was, like, we took over at, like, the 50
mhm,
after the fumble, and it was, like, false start, hold, bad snap, he had to throw away a couple, it's like, "What is this crap?"
exactly.
Yep.
But you didn't see what we saw last week. You didn't see a crippling turnover that became a defensive touchdown. You didn't see what we saw a lot of last year, which was Fields going hero mode and hero mode backfiring eventually.
Mhm.
We saw a clean game. And then on 3rd and 2, we saw Luke Getsy trust Justin Fields, put the game away with your arm, and DJ Moore rewarded a perfectly fine throw. We don't need to make the throw more than it is. Like, do you remember those old Madden copies where if you threw a screen pass, the announcer would read 62, like the game would clearly read that you threw a 62-yard touchdown pass. And so the
Oh, yeah.
announcer's line about that screen pass would be like, "What an unbelievable throw. Did you see
Yep.
the touch on this?"
Yep.
Like that
Yep.
kind of thing is about a
Yep.
screen
Yep.
pass. Like Fields had plenty of throws that were bangers, but his teammates are going to be a bigger story in this one, and
Mhm.
that's okay. In fact, I would argue that's what we've needed to see because
Sure.
Fields the superstar, we've seen that one. But
Mhm.
to play quarterback in this league, you have to be able, like an MLB pitcher, to pitch around your fastball. You have to be able to go up there and deliver quality start when your stuff isn't all the way working.
Yep.
Fields barely managed at above 50% completion percentage, but we still threw over 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, and most importantly, never gave Washington anything on offense that would have helped them get back into the game themselves.
Mhm.
That leaves me very excited and very curious to see what happens against a Minnesota team that is notorious for taking guys out of coverage with the blitz. So, if this offensive line brings their A game, man, and like the Bears pick up some blitzes, I mean, there could be back to back to back weeks of fireworks. But
Yep.
I don't want to get too
Mhm.
far ahead of myself.
Mhm. So so in terms of, like, I have 2 different things for, like, my final thoughts. I'm a little not as long-winded as you, so it probably won't take as long.
Well, thank you.
But so here's kind of what I want to I guess in terms of a team, the second half started the worst way possible. 3 minutes into the second half, they scored 8 points, the touchdown and the two-point conversion. Then all of a sudden Chicago goes 5 plays and out really quickly. Washington gets the ball, fumble, We got that one great, and then it was negative, negative, negative play, which we just talked about, and we punt again, and we're like, "What the heck?" We scored on every drive in the first half. The first 2 drives are terrible. They already got 8 points, and then Washington drove 70 yards and got a field goal. It's like, here it is, right? Every the worst case scenarios, they're gonna come back just like last week, like all this kind of stuff, and then Chicago put together a drive and got a field goal. And then, Washington puts together a drive, misses a field goal, and then we respond back with a touchdown, which we talked about that drive. But that field goal drive, even that was not something that we really even had last week. Like, we didn't have that resiliency of like, you know what? Okay, cool. We're going to battle back with you.
Right.
And we had that, which is, I think, is huge when you think of like this confidence and like what this team could be. Is like, that's what a normal football game is. You're not just going to blow somebody out and then they're going to blow you out in the second half. You have to go back and forth. So we saw a little bit of that. So that's one thing. The other thing is this: Bears fans, you're here, you're still listening. Okay, we love you. Enjoy this. Okay, we've had a
Amen.
lot of crappy news, a lot of bad things happening this year. Justin Fields has just had 2 great games in a row. We just won a game in prime time, doubling a team's score. Everyone saw it. Wear your Bears gear tomorrow. Talk all the trash you want to talk to somebody and enjoy this win.
Can't wait, man. Can't wait to get the tape for this one. Win tape. It's been almost a year. It's been almost a year. But finally people could stop posting the graphic about like, here are all the teams that have won a game since Elon like bought Twitter. But anyways, Nick, where can folks find you online?
Honestly, just on Twitter. Let's just have fun on Twitter. So at _ Nick Whalen on Twitter. I won't even advertise any of my DFS stuff. Just get me on there and let's put up some fun field stats back and forth and interact with me. I'd love it.
Let's have fun. You can find me on Twitter at Robert K. Schmitz, on YouTube at Robert Schmitz, on the Bears blog every day, where tomorrow, well, I guess now it's today, I'll have some post-game thoughts up and then I will sleep. But until next time, Bears fans, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Rate us on whatever podcast app you're on. We had 8 last I saw from Spotify. Let's get those numbers up. Let's get some 5-star ratings. And do send us DMs or not about where we can improve the podcast, or comment on YouTube. We're reading those too. So until next time, thank you so much for listening. Bear down. And thanks so much for bearing with us. Good night, everybody.